So I'm a neuroscientist, which makes me feeling slightly out of place tonight. But what I thought is that my sort of daily work existence is all around evidence. And there's not a lot of art and literature and poetry in my work life. That stuff I have to get here and at home and when I read. And I enjoy it, but it's not my day-to-day. And I wondered whether, as your experience might be sort of just the opposite, in the sense that you actually are immersed in art and literature and poetry and living this kind of more creative life, but not as exposed to some of the evidence side of things. So I had two little stories to just provide a little bit of evidence behind what you probably already know about the impact of the work that you do. So, in the first example was this little study that was done in Philadelphia a few years ago, where they had physicians, emergency physicians, who were at a training day, and there were new opioid guidelines. So, emergency physicians prescribe painkillers all the time. Opioids are what are really important to them, and there's a real crisis, and they get overprescribed. So there were new guidelines about how to do this, and they basically fell into 6 different themes. And they decided that, given that these are all professional doctors, they were going to present the information to the doctors in 2 different ways. So they had a 1-page sort of bullet point, here are the 6 themes, just facts, ma'am. And then they had a 1-page, this is a narrative that includes all 6 points. So they just made up a story that included the themes. And they gave people an hour with these sheets, and then afterwards they sort of interviewed all of these doctors whose professional career is using and prescribing this medicine correctly, right? So this is really relevant to them. And what they found was that the people who had gotten the narrative were significantly able to remember more of the information than the people who had gotten the exact same information when they just gave it as just facts. And in some ways, I think, of course, narrative is a really powerful tool for memory and for bringing people on a journey. But it's a really nice illustration that often, even when it's absolutely critical for what you do, I mean, people's lives are at stake for these people. You would think that, for God's sake, you could learn 6 things, right? I mean, that's not too much to ask. Nonetheless, when you put it in that kind of a framework, it really made a big difference to them. So, second story is just one that happened to me with a company, Audible, who makes audiobooks, right? And they came to me and said, look, is there any way to know whether or not people engage with the story differently if they listen to the audiobook versus like watching a movie? And they basically wanted to know if you're watching Game of Thrones, is that different than if you're listening to their audiobook? And there's an awful lot known about sort of psychology and neuroscience of narrative and language and things like that, but that's actually a pretty open question. And I said, I don't know, but I know how to answer it. We can do the study to check. And we did this, right? So we ran this experiment where we had people listening to audiobooks or watching the video versions of these various stories. We just chose emotionally engaging scenes. And one of the things that we did was we asked them about their experience, but we also measured biometrics on them. So we measured things like their heart rate, their galvanic skin response, things that you don't control. They're just involuntary physiological responses. And what was really fascinating was there was a really big difference. When you ask people, well, what did you attend to more? What did you find more engaging, etc.? They consistently came down on the side of the video, right? Every one of them were like, this is more engaging. I attend more. I feel like I'm more part of the story. I feel like I can see the point of view of the characters better. But when you measure their implicit responses, they're actually showing that they're doing more work. They're having a stronger emotional engagement when they're listening to the audio. Why is that? Well, in one case, they are mostly passively anyway, receiving this material, right? So the directors come up with a vision, they've shot this, and they've given you the whole story in front of you. And in one case, you as an audience are co-creating that with the author who put these things together. It's your imagination that's generating the voices, the scenes, the action, all the rest of it. And that's more work, right? That is more engaging. It's more physically engaging. It engages your heart more. It engages your autonomic nervous system, your emotional systems more. And people remember the stories better. They believe them better when they see that. It isn't what they're taking away consciously, right? They're saying, no, I enjoy the video more. But we can actually use this kind of neuroscientific approaches to say, well, look, the experience really is different. And the power of the spoken word or the written word, depending on the modality that you're using, can be really strong relative to all the kids looking at their phones and watching things in video. So I suspect that these are things that you guys know. I'm not telling you something new. Narrative is really important. And of course, people are co-creating the material with you as an author. But now, hopefully, I've given you two little random pieces of evidence from neuroscience, or at least psychology in this case, that you can use at dinner tables to say, you know what? It's not only what I do that's important and you know it, but there's actual scientific evidence behind that. And that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. So thank you very much.